How's it going, everyone? Scott McKay here, Thin Air Graphics, bringing you another down and dirty tricks video. This time we're doing the chain how-to. I'm going to walk you through 3 types of chains on 3 different backgrounds. So how to do it on a white background and work from that direction up using a vector mask that's available for download at the store, on a dark surface, working back from the highlights backwards, and then on a mid-tone using tones of red, and that's an example of what you do with a multicolor surface. The files are available for download that go with this video, as well as a bunch of bonus files that come with it that you can do chains in all different positions for a multitude of projects. So it's a great project. You learn a lot from this that transfers over to a lot of other projects. So let's have fun. Let's get painting. Alright, before we get started on the painting, I want to go over the vector file that's available from the store. If you want to follow along and paint this project, this is the file you're going to get here. The one we use for the project is this set of links here. If you want to do it at a 3-dimensional angle, a little bit smaller, I've created this one as well. And these are the full-length ones that aren't boxed in. This is the infinity chain, which you can keep repeating over and over again if you want, simply by doing this. I grab both of them. On my Mac, I'm hitting Command, Option, Shift. If you're on a PC, it's Control, Alt, Shift. And then you got to just slide it to a position, move it, and then you got to hit Control D or Command D to duplicate it as many times as you want. It's that simple to create that link, and you can just have an infinity link, basically. If you want the links to move around, I've created these just individual ones, and you can just kind of pick this one, you can copy this one, and just kind of move them around and put the links however you want to put it. And now we'll do this one here. You can change the size and pitch if you want. You can hit and you can make the chain links do whatever you want. If you want to make it easier and clean it up, it's really easy to do. I use this plug-in called Dynamic Sketch from Astute Graphics, and using their pen, you can just delete intersecting paths like this. That's simple, and that's ready to cut. And you can have a chain go all over the place. If you want something a little bit more complex, with the download, it also comes with this file here. Zoom out so you can see it. This has a whole series of chains, perspective chain link. This we'll use on a drawbridge for a dragon piece of a castle. We have these draping chains at different angles. This one kind of has a ring and a split. This one's got a ring and split and tension. This one's got some broken links. We got a railroad spike. And then the black ones here, these are all silhouettes of this, so you can do a positive negative masking. That's all included in the download. With that said, this is the one we're doing. Plotting this out. We're going to apply this to the board and get painting. So let's get moving. Now I have my vinyl cut, and I've pre-weeded, so I'm going to show you the different ways you can go about weeding these out ahead of time. There's basically 4 different ways. 1, don't weed anything out, apply the transfer tape and stick the whole thing down, and then pick and weed everything out. 2, weed the whole thing, so you end up with a silhouette, and that's what we're going to use for the red. That way we can paint the chain color. The links that are turned on their side, the ones pointing directly at you, the side, these are what's going to go on the black surface. So we're going to paint these links first, then remove the mask, and then paint those links. That's going to give you that depth. And then the opposite of that one is you remove the flat links, so you can see both planes of the chain, and that's going to go on the white surface. And we're going to start doing your darks. We're going to do your drop shadows. Then we're going to pull the centers and go from there. And that'll all be explained as we go through it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer tape these, and I'm going to apply them to the mask. And that's been covered in my other videos, so I'm not going to tie up a lot of time showing how to transfer tape and put the hinge technique. You got to put the transfer tape, we're going to peel it, stick it, and get painting. Time to go. I've transferred all the vinyl mask. In this case, we used the LeBlue mask, as you saw me cutting earlier. The nice thing about the LeBlue, it cuts very clean, very smooth. And for my plotter, which is the GX24 or even the CX24, I go between 90 and 110, 120 grams, depending how new the blade is. And I usually slow my machine down to about 6 or 8 centimeters a second. So it's fairly slow, so I get nice smooth cuts. I don't tear the material. But this stuff, it cuts like butter, cuts really easy. Weeds on and off, whether it's clear coated surfaces that have been sanded or base coated, as you'll see here. So everything's ready to rock and roll. So we're going to go in. We're going to do the white chain first. I'll show you how that goes. Then we'll do the black, and then how to tie both together into a piece like this. So maybe we'll make this one a little bit funkier of a color, maybe a little bit of just a little color tone in it, so it's not just a chain. And we're going to work from our reference, which is an actual chain. Okay, so it's always nice to have a real piece of reference, and we're going to be able to look at that and see how the light bounces off it. I'm going to mirror that here. With this video is also going to include the high-res images of the chain I've taken ahead of time for you to work with, as well as this file, the brush set. So when you download this video, watch it, learn from it, then go over to the store, click on it. You can buy the whole brush set and vector set library that includes it, and we'll get going from there. All right, time to mix up some paint and get going. Okay, so what I've done here is I've mixed up 5 different colors. So we have a black, which I've added a little bit of white because I never use white, and I've used the 5078 opaque black. You could also use the transparent black over the regular illustration colors. It's not really transparent, it's semi-transparent compared to this one. We've used the opaque white, which is the 5068 illustration series. I've used opaque blue. Again, you could use the illustration, either one. That's 5075. And then I'm using the standard 4012 reducer, the high performance reducer, and the 4030 additive because I am painting on metal. Painted surface, hard surface, so I want that extra bite and flow and grip. So, mixed up these colors. I've got them one in each airbrush here. You don't need that many airbrushes for the lesson. It's going to go a lot smoother. I do recommend at least 2, one for your dark colors, one for your lights. So what I did here is we got a straight black, which, not straight, I add a few drops of white just so it's not full black. A black that's got a blue cast to it. We got a nice mid-tone gray. We have a blue gray, which is lighter, mixed with the white and a little bit of blue. And then we have almost pure white. Again, I don't ever really do pure white. Usually I do it maybe at the end. And when you're on a white surface, you don't really want pure white. We can always erase back to the white. And we have our chain reference. Okay, in the video you'll also get the chains. When you download the files, you'll get the image of the chains that I've taken and included in it, so you have some reference to look at. Always good to have reference, and you can kind of see how that light source goes. Okay. And the vector I've created has the chain weld, and we'll address that, and that's what really makes this come out. And we are going to get started. So, what I'm going to do is start with the white one. This is kind of the easiest and most common for one to wrap their head around because it's on a light surface, a white background, and you'll work your shadows and go from there. We have this as a reference, so you can look at it in the light source and see where the hot spot is across here, the core shadows down here, and this is a smooth surface, so it doesn't really reflect. But when you look at the chains themselves, we'll pull up one nice little link here. You look at the chain itself, we'll go into here. You can see how it's got multiple light core highlights and core shadows, and that's what we're going to mimic here. And you can see in my video with my lighting here, there's a little bit of blue cast. That's why I did the blue. Okay, so we can keep that there for reference, just to kind of look at. And we'll get started. So, first color I did, let me bring out my little spray widget here, is a blue-gray, okay? This is the blue-gray color. And what you need to do is you want to make sure you get all the surface. That way, when you unmask it, there's no pure white, so that you want the chain to pop. So I'm just going to lightly kind of fog the whole thing. I'm going to keep in mind my shadows. Light source is always top down. So I'll put the heavier down the bottoms. Okay. And I'll make sure I just kind of kiss the tops a little bit, or maybe just kind of give it a fog. We'll be more careful when we get to the sideways links. The reason why this is the easiest chain to do is we have a link pictured on its side, like this, like you see in just the side of it, and then you have one pictured like that, so you see on the side. When you get to the 45 tilt and the angle ones like in the vectors, there's just more, you got to think a little bit more and unmask and remask a little bit and save your spots. So I don't go too nuts here. I'm going to start establishing the core shadows right down the bottom, and they're just nice, even, kind of like a soft pillow stroke, almost like a little rat tail. Just go across, and then I'll do a lighter one up top. Okay, just to kind of create that cylinder. So you see how that already starts to look a little rounded, but I'm not going all the way to the edge. You got to stay off the edge a little bit. I'm going to come around here, and the top we're going to do slight. Now this is the mid. I like to start the mids. Okay, that way it's already established. A couple things you can do here for the links. These sideways pieces, you can kind of go freehand like this and just give them a little stronger down the bottom, stronger at the top. I'm doing stronger on the bottom. You can also take an edge and just kind of use a straight edge or something and just block it out if you want a little bit crisper of a weld. Okay, so if you want to come in, you can use the plastic razor blades and make things a little sharper. So let's go here. So I just made that little sharp edge. I'll do it on this side. Alright, see how that makes a nice link? Super, super easy. So I'm going to do that. Same thing here. Now I'm going to repeat. You can use the eraser in here. You can start like carving out a little bits of detail. You can also just do a little, just kind of like almost hard spots of shadow. Just freehand them in there, just little wiggles, just to give the chains a little, like it's reflecting the environment around it. The nice thing is you don't have to be, if you're not going for like a super realistic chrome chain, you know, perfectly polished, you can get a little bit creative with some of these lines. Same thing here, I'm going to wiggle it around. Go all the way across. I'm allowing my overspray to get all around the chain, I'm not worried about it. Again, see, just establishing it. That's why I like working mid first, especially on white. I do it almost on, when I'm coming down to the black. We're going to do mid. And then we'll make that weld a little more defined. See, you get a little bit. This is one of those lessons, you practice a few times, it really helps you with other types of objects that are rounded, because you kind of learn how to make things look three-dimensional and rounded and shaded properly, and to work loose and tight. It's simple, simple. Now we go to this guy. Now you can go as realistic as you want here. You can go super realistic and spend all the time to kind of study every little facet of it. You could put a little grunge effects in here. You could put some texture effects to make the chain. Maybe we'll do a little texture effects on this red just to show you, make the chain look a little bit more beat up. And then we're going to do the shadow. To do the shadow, what most people make a mistake when they do this is they'll shadow, like I'm going to do it right here, they're going to shadow straight across, make it really hard. You don't want to do that. That shadow should radius kind of down, because the chain, when you look really close at it, you know, the drop shadow actually casts a little bit further out because light gets between the chain. So what I do, we're going to go just down the bottom, we're going to darken the whole thing across. And then you're almost going to come out here and just kind of radius your shadow a little bit. Okay, just enough, and we'll do more when we do the next color. I just want to make sure I have this separation, because what I'll do is I could render this all out and make this chain done and then do these links, but I like to work the whole thing at once. So from here, we will pull the chains, the sideways links out, because these are pretty easy because it's straight, so we can always just go back in and sharpen things out with an edge. Or you can save them off to the side and go from there. And I'm using my straight bright blades. Love these things because it doesn't scratch the surface. Okay. And there we go. So now we have these links. And I'm going to repeat the same thing, just more across one line. Working in the mids. I'm going to make sure I kind of hook around. You don't want to go straight off the edge. I'm going to come right down the base. Maybe give a couple little wiggles in it. Make sure I kind of bump this out here. And just kind of kiss over the whole thing. Go back in. Hit the link, you know, where it's welded together. And let me come with this angle. Okay, simple, simple. Same thing here. Don't go too nuts with little details here, because you can add them in as you go. Now, what you could do too is, if you want, you could establish that first, so you know where they are, and then work off that. I've done that too. And then work the left to right. There we go. Just kind of go around. Okay, we can just do that. And that way, see, it stays lighter here at the bottom. That's really key. You don't want this bottom of the chain link to be the same value as this, because then they'll just blend together. You got to have it lighter. You want to have that almost that secondary highlight that's on the bottom and the top. That makes the separation work, makes it more believable. And that's it. Right there is good to go. Now, what I'm going to do is I have a darker gray. This darker gray here, I can go in and just pick out a couple little. I'm not going to use this too much. I'm going to use this to pick a little bit more detail. This one could use a little bit more reduction. It's not flowing the way I want it. And then just gotta hit those little hit those shadows a little more in those. And just little tails come across. Those little ones at the top. The more freehand you do inside the mask, the more natural it's going to look. I don't use a lot of edges in here, because I want everything to kind of softly blend out. I've always found when you mix freehand with purposeful masks and templates or stencils, what have you, you get the best of both. You want things crisp when they're crisp, so you use a hard mask, or like a loose edge if you want to soften it up. And then freehand to really kind of pull it all together, especially for things that have to look a little bit more natural. Okay, so now if I want, I can make these a little sharper, the shadow. I can just pop that here. Just give a little kiss. See how fast that separates it? The nice thing about the mask, you can set the blade right on it. And it already starts to create that lift. Okay, nice and clean. Do the tops. Now what I do a lot of times, I just let the blade kind of tuck right in there into the template. You have the edge of the mask, that slight little edge, and it stays nice and clean. And you know, you kind of want it to be a little messy here. And once it's all done and pulled off, it's really going to look cool. Remember, all this is core shadows, core highlights, cylindrical, basic shading to form that look of a chain. Now, you know, once you get this in a rhythm, you'll do a whole section of chain on, say, the side of a bike really, really fast. I'm taking my time here, but once you do it, you just go boom, boom, boom. You'll go right down the line. It's pretty quick. That being said, you know, plan accordingly. Don't think it's so fast where you don't charge accordingly and you end up losing, because it's very easy to, and you don't want that. And that's looking good. That's looking cool. All right. I'm going to go to my blue black here. And I'm just going to kind of hit this a little bit down the bottom and kind of create that definition. I think I'm going to make this a little bit more transparent. Two ways to do that. You can add just a little bit more reducer if the paint's thick enough, which this is. Or if you're at the right consistency for the paint to flow right, but you want it more transparent, then you just want to add a little transparent base. Give it kind of a second to emulsify. Get a nice spray. And same thing. Now we're going to hit this and just radius down a little bit. Okay, just go down. See how that's starting to kind of create that drop shadow, how it radiuses down? That's what we're looking for. See how far I'm coming down? Because that shadow would cast down around the chain. Subtle, subtle. You could use different candies in here and start tinting it. You could establish this stuff first and then go in with your lighting with candies and highlights. Make sure we get this all separated. Doesn't take long. It's a pretty quick project overall. And you can go in and just tap in little harsh details if you want. And I can soften them up with that gray because they're semi-opaques. Like it's catching some detail around the shop or the studio, wherever the chains are supposed to be living. Just remember, whatever you do on one, you got to do on the other, because they're all reflecting pretty much the same source. So be consistent. I think the consistency is probably what's going to really make this the most believable. And you can come through with an edge if you want and make like a slightly sharp highlight, a shadow, like that if you want, and a couple of them. Just keep it pretty light. Don't do too many. Just enough. Alright, I'm going to switch back to my first gray. That's that blue gray. And I'm just going to kind of, oops, I missed one. So you want to talk about consistency, and you'll notice it. I didn't do this length, but I did all those. And it's noticeable. I mean, I'm doing this fairly quick. If you spend a lot more time, you can make these chains look super real. It's really as much time as you want to do with it. See, by going with the opaque, I can soften some of these harsh lines down. And I can kiss over the whole chain. Just keep establishing the midtones and get everything right where you want it. Going with some erasing techniques. Punch out those little highlights. And then it's pretty much done. So we'll come in now with the white. We'll hit this stuff. With the brightest brights and kind of the centers. You can even do like the erosion technique where you go straight reducer. You kind of push through and get those natural highlights to the background. And that's kind of it. I'll go through afterwards. Like I said, the key is going through afterwards. Once you unmask it and you do your drop shadows and you do things like that, you can establish the final look of everything once you see how it relates to the background. Let's make sure we tone these breaks in. And we hit right here. Okay, now we are on chain number 2. We finished up chain 1 for the most part. I'm going to leave this as is. We'll go back through and maybe punch out some highlights at the end and kind of balance everything out and show you how to tie it all together. We'll run through this one a lot quicker. This one we're starting the opposite. Whereas we were on a light surface, so we had to establish mid-tone darks and then highlights at the end. On a dark surface, which most of your motorcycles and cars and things are, you're going to be here a lot. You're going to be in the blacks or in the mid-tone reds, greens, blues, what have you. I treat light silver cars the same as white. I do that process on silver, which gives you a nice metallic look. But on this, we're going to get right to it and start with the horizontally laying links because they're in the foreground. So when you're on a light surface, I work from the background items up. That way you do your shadows and you unmask, you do your shadows, you unmask. You're very rarely having to remask. When you're on a dark surface, it's the opposite. You start with the furthest, the closest thing to you and highlight it and work your way back to establish that depth. Very similar to when I did my Black Widow project and how we radius the legs, same aspect, okay? That's what we're doing here. So if you've done my Down and Dirty Tricks Black Widow project, this is like doing the legs, okay? Those joints. So same thing there. And the way my program works is I try to do a lot of different lessons that have elements from each other. That way as you run through and you start getting into more complex projects like Grim Reapers and portraits and faces and things like that, you start to understand how to push and pull the highlights and midtones and shadows, and that gives you that depth. And that's what it's really all about. So let's get to it. All right, I'm starting with my mid-tone, which is the gray, kind of gray-blue color I mixed up. Okay, this color here, you see it's got a little bit of a bluish tone. Okay, now I'm going to run the core highlights. I want to radius around here like this. I'm going to cut straight across. Kind of establish those. And this time I'm going to work inside. Okay? The other way I did this and shadowed out. Now I'm going to do the highlight to the edge. See how that works? And I'm focusing on the top. When I did the lower links, I focused on the bottom first. This time I'm focusing on the top because this is the highlight. These look really good if you want to establish a little bit of added texture, little details from Mr. Gerald Mendez, or a little grunge effects from Mike LaValle you can do. That works better with solvents and water. And I'm just cutting across. Now see how that almost looks white, but it's not. This is the mid-tone gray. This is that one we did first, but you'll see how much brighter it is on a dark surface. We're going to make sure we go to the edge so it makes that secondary highlight, like we left here. You know, if you see we left that gap, we want to kind of get that established. And we'll just kind of hit that bottom one there. You can work out like that from there if you want. Radius around. Keep it loose. Again, we can kind of create these little marks, and like the chain has some damage as it's catching light. So we don't need to go. And when we get to this one here, if we were on a red, we could make this with different tones, or we could just gray wash the whole thing and then do these. I might leave this chain a little bit of the red so it's reflecting like a red environment. And we make sure we get the top established as the brightest. Top-down light source, okay? Make sure we get those edges because we want this to pop off the black. You know, and I'm not going for these super smooth transitions like precision freehand. I'm actually letting it kind of get a little wonky, so to speak. And just maybe a couple little scuffs and just kind of stray marks. And it's just going to add a little depth. But see how that's already kind of looking radiused? And once we've established that, now I can pull these. Okay. Save them if you need to. When you go into the vectors that I supplied, that are like tilted on their side, so look a little bit more like realistic angles, you're going to have to like fold things back and put them back in. So a lot of times with those, I'll do this where I'll do this. I'll pull a section, spray it, and then pull it back, and things like that. Or cut a paper stencil that lines up with your shape, and then you can go in and just kind of change things like that. And there we go. So now we have this. Same thing. Let's just go right down here. Let's do more of this freehand, then we'll tighten things back up. And we'll just high speed this repetitiveness and get back to the regular piece right about now. Now I did texture there, so I gotta put some in here. Make it match. Just a little bit, nothing big. Okay. See, sometimes I like that softer look than that hard edge. That's really your call. Or depending on your ability, your freehand ability. Do as much or as little freehand as you want. Again, I'm trying not to put a lot of darks up here. I'm letting that shadow kind of radius down. And I'm going to come back in and blend stuff out. We'll kiss over the whole thing. You could do a little, throw a little chrome paint over this, make it reflect light, give it that kind of anodized look, or a fine silver, something like that. But it's pretty much, it's just the exact opposite of that. I worked in the opposite direction. Now once I'm at this point, I kind of flip back to the same shadows and highlighting as I did before. So let's go in. I'm going to go in with this kind of blue tone, and I will use my edge to establish better definition. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll come up and do those little details right out of it. See how nice that looks? Instead of a straight edge, just kind of come up and start your detail. Really simple. Do it again right here. I'm just going to put the stencil and I'm going to go strokes. I'm going to go radius around. Okay? And I'm not putting the black to the edge. Put the black to the edge, it's going to disappear on you. Just little bits. Okay? So now same thing here. I'm going to do that radius. Establish that first. Okay, see that? How it looks like it's radius away. That really helps the believability of depth. When I first started doing this, I wasn't doing that. And working with other painters, me and Rhino teaching classes, working with Craig, working with Corey, just working with everyone over the years. I've learned to see things better because you're always learning. Freehand things like that, and just make things look more real. But I try to simplify things. Since I do a lot of custom motorcycle work, we're not dealing with guys who typically want photorealism. You do have the occasional one, and for those guys who want it and they're willing to pay for the time, we do as much realistic and freehand technique and that we can. See how that's just starting to come together now? Two colors, all we've done so far. We're really already getting that believability. 10 minutes in. Now again, I'm doing these pretty quick, 10 minutes. If you got smaller links, like actual size, and you're going down the side of a truck, it's going to get repetitive. Just because it took you 5 minutes to do this section, and you're doing, a thing 20 times the size, doesn't mean it's going to be 20 times 5. You're going to get tired, you're going to get slower, you may get faster, but just budget your time. Make sure you plan accordingly. When you're doing repetitive things that look easy when you do a smaller section, when you go to doing a larger scale, some things take longer sometimes than you anticipate. And that's where we as artists end up eating up our time the most. See that little white going across there? That's that same highlight. That's the secondary light bouncing off. You can go and edge it like this too, and do maybe a sharper edge if you want. Just be careful not to go too far into the corners, okay? Because you want that to radius around. It looks like it turns. Maybe do a couple little reflections of items in the background of the chain. Just take your time. I know it's hard to see that on the cameras, And just work those shadows around. The mid-tone on the black really comes together when you start doing the highlights, the final highlights. Just keep working those little details in there. And this is where you dictate your time. You know, the more you want to put in, the more realistic it's going to look, the more you're going to wow the customer. But if you got to do the job quick, you can do these highlights and shadows really quick and get the point across and move on to the next project. You can do little breaks in the chain if you want, like little stress cracks, especially the tight chains. You can put a couple little stress cracks and things like that. I think it just adds a little character. And then from here, that's just about it. I'm going to go in with my highlight color now. And we're going to punch out the highlights. Got that brightest spot, and that's what's going to kind of bring it on home. See how that really sells it? And again, I'll go back through once we unmask. Do some little wiggles. And I'm not going for super clean chrome chains here. I'm going for chains that have been beat up a little bit. And now that, you know, as long as your edges are established, later on you can go back in after you unmask and kind of balance out the tones, balance out the reflections, make sure it's what you want. Go back down to this one while I'm here. I think this one down the bottom, I'm gonna add some more highlights and darkness to pop it off the white background. But we'll see. Just little nuances. Don't make it all precision clean unless that's what you're going for. But I want kind of industrial look. You can wash a little rust color over it. You can wash some candy tints if you're doing like one of the bikes I did with the Blue Dragon. Yeah, I'll pull that up on the screen here. The Blue Dragon here with the chain bridge going down. That was done using the same technique. We just did it with candies after I established all the final tone. Really want to pull that radius. And if you want to do a little uplighting, you could do the opposite. Just be really careful on this chain here. Just highlight the bottom to separate it. So that brings that link a little better into the foreground. And same thing on this, you can do that here. You can take a piece of tape and go straight across this one too if you want. I like to work link to link and then just balance it out as I go. Okay. Make sure these wells are what I found really sells the whole look, because it makes that look like a chain. All right, that is chain number 2. Let me pull my chair back up here. We're gonna zoom back out. So that's chain number 2. We did chain number 1, chain number 2. Still less than an hour for both. But you can see how valuable this will be. And now what I'm going to do is just show you the mid-tone, which what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a little bit different. I'm going to maybe bring a little orangey kind of glow into this, so you can see how to establish it. If you want just silver chain to look like this, 2 ways. You can spray the black in, or like a mid-tone silver, and repeat this, and not even put the masks in. You can just go back in freehand and just do all your drops like this. You can take, once you spray your tone, depending how dark a light, you can go back in and just kind of kiss those back in there like that, and go from there, however you want to do it. All right. And that's it for number 2. So you're on a light surface, you're on a dark surface, and I'm going to unmask these right now, and then I'll show you the difference, and we'll show you how to treat this. Okay, so I'm going to start pulling this off, and then we're going to get to this last, just so you can see how this works. Like I say, with the blue mask, it pulls off really easy and clean. And if you don't establish too much overspray, you know, a lot of wet paint, there's no edge to this. You go to clear this thing, 1 round of clear, you're done. And this was just a straight black of the panel. Ta-da. Done. That looks pretty good. I probably wouldn't mess with too much, aside from, you know, taking the black color that's there. And what I'll probably do with this is we can soften the chain down the bottom, so it almost dies off into the background color. And just make sure it's established really well, maybe into the sides. Just cut across here. Make that just blended and go right to the background. Really, it's how dark you want it. Whatever the environment you're working with. On the Blue Dragon piece, there's a lot of fire glow going on, so we want it really bright. And then you can go in and do some extra highlighting. If you want to do like ones right on the edge and let the overspray kind of go like that. So now that's kind of making the chain look like it's reflecting a light without doing like the t-shirt bling highlight. Just inside here, just kind of pull back the airbrush, just let the overspray get out there a little bit, subtly. And I'm pretty much going to call that done. We're done enough for the video. Feel free to mess around and add or subtract whatever you want to make it your own. Okay, so the white. I think the white's going to need a little bit more jump, so I am going to hit these, maybe darken the bottoms a little bit more with this blue-black, because it's hard to do that afterwards with this. You can always lighten it up a little bit with whites, but I want to make sure that we have it established pretty well. And like I did with this, I'm going to use that darker gray. And I'm just going to come up with a couple little lines. You'll play with these and get the tone you're happy with. And we'll see what happens when we unmask it. Let's get the drop shadows here a little darker. Yeah, I like that. See, just a matter of playing with it. Playing with the tone. Just getting it exactly where you want it to be. Alright, let's see how that looks. Nice, it's pretty gray, which means I can really go back in and establish highlights with the white and have it pop. Get that under this edge. Now, I didn't use a lot of the background color. I could have. Oh, and like I said, you could always erase back in. Or just go back in now with your white and really kind of brighten up that chain. Maybe do lots of little interesting gleams on the chain and bring it out. I'll probably go back to a pure opaque white for those finals and just get it exactly where I want it. Now the nice thing about doing it in white is drop shadow. Drop shadow, I do these very soft. Do that very soft. Alright, what I'll do now is I'll take the little eraser here and we'll go in and we can bring out those brightest white highlights. That's the nice thing about working on this white background. I can really carve these out. See how that just woke it right up? Or just go back to a pure opaque white, or use a brush, whatever you want. I do like the erasability of the Create text. You can do this with solvent too. Sometimes it takes a little more power to do. But see, that's really waking it up. Final little highlight. So you want to be really tricky. The chain link's big enough you can hide your signature in here. Hide your initials. See on that little bit? Just waking it right up. You can't do that in black because it'll go back to the darkest color, so don't do that. And that's it. That is a dark and light chain. We'll get over to this one here and we'll show you how to make that look like it's kind of in that environment. And we'll use some candies and we'll make this red one really pop. On to the next lesson. Alright guys, so we're on the final project here. Like I said, if you want to do a chain color just like these and you're on a mid-tone surface, you would use this technique, you would put this down, and then you would spray in either a silver or a gray or a wash of color. And then repeat what we did here. Depending if you went with a darker one, you'd go this route. If you went with a lighter one, you'd go this route. I'm not going to do that because it's kind of repetitive. So we're going to work right with this chain here. And to make it simple, this is straight, so it's really easy. If you do use the curved chain, you want to use the actual mask. But I can just cut straight across like this. And just make sure your lengths are good, gaps are covered. Or if you want to get, perfect, size it so your chain is the exact width of tape and just one will lay in. So the new colors for this one, I'm adding in some illustration opaque chrome yellow, some opaque red, or you could use coagulation crimson, it's a little darker. And then I'm adding Candy 2.0 Grabber Orange because I want to make this look like it has kind of a fiery glow. This will come in handy if you're doing like flames and fire and things like that, and just switch your color set around. So what I'm going to do first is I made like a reddish black, and I made a red that's just slightly tinted. And then I have the pure chrome yellow, and then I have the candy orange. Maybe I'll hit a little white too from before mixture, but probably not. So let's again do what we did before. I'm going to start with my midtones. Get things flowing. I'm not using black. I would not use black. See how nice and looks pretty dark? That's the actual color I'm using. So it's not super dark. If you use black, it'll just kill it. This could be a good place for a little texture. Just give that a little bit of a little extra something to look at in the chain. I am gonna, just to be safe, I'm gonna cover this up. I don't want to get any overspray on these because I want these pieces to look well for photographing later. So we're just gonna take these and we're just gonna do that. And make sure we don't ruin the work we've already done. You can use candy red here, you can use a really weak black. I'm just kind of going in like this and repeating that same look I did on the other ones, just using this kind of mid-tone red. I'm not trying to be perfect here, I'm just adding some tone. You could use a candy red here and just put a little bit of candy black in it and darken it. Let's go across here. Good. Let me get my next color in here. Now, I would usually go up to these colors, but I'm not gonna. I am gonna go to this darker tone here, which is like a really thin black with that red tint. When I hit these joints, I need to do a little bit more reducer and get it flowing the way I want it. I'm going to pause here for a second. Alright, so we're going to come back in. Yeah, there we go. Just a little shading. Now when you clear this, you'll be able to see through the red a little bit. So on camera it probably looks super dark, but when it's cleared, it'll pick up some of those some of that red underneath. So I'm doing that same thing, that core shadow, cutting across, core shadow. You know, I can go hard edge if I want, that little bit, and soften off it. If you prefer, you could work light then dark on this. Because it's mid-tone, it's kind of your preference. I just chose to do it this way because I did. And do a couple of little marks like we did before. We'll save most of that for done. Notice every once in a while I just kind of mist over the whole thing, just so I know we're getting on there. So we can do this and pull these off. And then we're going to go into another high-speed round because this is just a repeat of the last ones. Just on the side. And then we'll come back into the next step. Again, we're going to do these drop shadows kind of at a curve. This is the first color. This is the lighter red, this one here. Just establishing kind of the base of this, so then we can do the highlighting. We'll add some textures back in to the whole thing. Do these darks. Cool. Another color I made up for this was, it's almost the same color from before. I used the blue, I just added a little bit more red. That'll be my darker shadows here. Alright, and that just establishes kind of the tone of where everything is. I'm going to play back and forth with that. So let's get the yellow in here. The yellow isn't opaque, just like white, so it's going to be a little overpowering. And we want to make sure we're flowing right. And we don't want to kill it. Okay, we're going to go in. We are going to be using candies here, so if we kill it a little bit, it's fine. We can tone it. I'm just going to get those highlights right across the top of the chain. Let's get right in, make that kind of bright, so you can really kind of get that nice weld, hot spot. Then maybe we'll come up the other side like this. See that? Just like we were doing with the this chain here. We're doing the same process here right now, okay? Again, if you're not too capable freehand, You can take an edge, maybe hold it a little bit away, and just hit a soft, highlight. I'm going to make sure that chain pops off, so I'm going to hit that link right across there and just sharpen that edge. Top of that link, just to bring it out. Again, what you do in one spot, you want to repeat. So you can go through and do this. Do this to all of them, so they all kind of match up with the same reflection types. Just getting that worked in. That initial yellow started a little bit of white mixed in. That's why it was that color. As it's running through, I'm actually liking that tone a little better. Just gonna kiss over that whole thing here. Okay. Do a couple of little ones on the bottom of the chain, because if it's in a fire environment, it's going to be catching it from all around. So let's make sure we get just a little down the bottom, it's like it's catching some secondary light. And maybe what I will do, just so it's super bright, I will hit it with some, add a little bit of white into that yellow to get it back to that color. And we're going to just hit. We're just going to hit those highlights. We're going to candy over it anyway, so and get to that point, and we're going to just give it a candy wash, and then we'll tighten up any little bit of details. I'm using Grabber Orange, mixed with a little 40-30, and now we're just going to kind of tone over this whole thing. And make that chain look like it's glowing. We can go back through with brush effects later. And then why don't I take a little bit of that black from before. I'm going to tint down this candy. And I'm going to use this candy for my shadow. So it's almost a brown color. So it's going to be transparent. And we'll cut the finals with that. So let's just do it freehand like this. Bring the radius down. Just get that dark under there. and then play with the highlights and play with the shadows. And again, after you unmask and tie it into your overall piece. That's how I would do it. This would be a good drop shadow color too. And you can come in, pick little highlights, little textures and grit and things like that. So I have yet to, this is the first time I've ever done a red chain, so we'll see how it looks. If my system works the way I think it does, then even the first time you do it, you trust the way it looks, and it should be all good. Alright, let's see how we look. Pretty good overall. I think I'd like to see it a little bit more defined. So maybe I might go a little bit more red, but it really depends on the background. Because if we go through and say we kind of give this a little bit of texture in the background, like maybe use Gerald's, and just kind of make this background a little dirtier. So it's not so flat. And then we do a nice drop shadow here. I'm going to cut right across like this. This is going to cut across. And the lengths are just going to come up. Obviously we could be more technical about it. This is just kind of a nice quick way to do it. We'll texture out these. And then what I think we'll do is we'll blast a few final highlights. There's a little extra reducer. Get maybe a little candy wash and she'll be all set. This is something I played with a little bit more until I was happy with it. But it's really cool overall. So let's look at them all side by side. All done, pretty much the same technique. When you're on a light surface, I work from the bottom lengths up, dark surface, top lengths down, highlight, highlight on the way. Mid-tone, do kind of the same thing. This is the basis of it. The more you do it, the more you experiment with it, the more you play with it, you'll really get a better understanding of the chains and light sourcing and messing around with it, erasing techniques. This is just one approach to it. You can work with candies, you can work with opaques, you can work with semi-transparents. You can do a lot of erasing techniques and brushwork techniques, faux finishing with rust, and anything you can do. The basic here is the vector file for this is very useful, comes in very handy. I've also included a vector brush, which you can draw a path in Adobe Illustrator and put the brush effect. It does curve the links a little bit, which I don't love, but I haven't figured out a way to make the links move on their own solid like that. Maybe I will, and then I'll upload that at another time. But you have this file, which you can just repeat the straight links into infinitely. You can choose the ones that are more draped and with the links and the D-rings and the hooks and things like that. You can mess with those. So I hope you learned a lot from this one. It's a great tutorial. It's a great thing to learn because it has a lot of, this goes into a lot of other things. So like I said, the Black Widow, when you're doing skulls, when you're doing all sorts of stuff, all these come into play. This is just a nice way to do the cylindrical technique that you see in basic airbrushing, but have some more fun with it, and it has some real world application on cars, motorcycles, illustrations, whatever. And these files can be used in Photoshop for digital painting, and you can run the same effects and things like that. So go on to the store, download it, make sure you share this video, please subscribe, like it, email me some feedback, things you like, things you didn't. I plan on bringing a lot more of these to you, and hope you enjoyed this series of Down and Dirty Tricks. Hope to see you at some of the workshops, and see you on the next video. Have a good one. See ya. And here's the chains all set. Hope you guys have followed this project. Go on the site, download the files, and share what you guys did. I want to thank FBS for making the amazing blue mask, the blue paint mask, and Createx colors for the paints we used in this project. And of course we used Iwata spray guns, my airbrushes, and we keep those things sharp with the Sharpen Air. Amazing little tool, all available at Coast Airbrush. And thanks for watching. It's another Thin Air Graphics, Scott McKay, Down and Dirty Tricks. Stay tuned for the next one.